showing information and not saying what they actually mean. Don't be afraid to fail. Say what you mean. Put it out there. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's competition. That's advertising. Be honest. Alright, so that was a wrap up on Craigslist. Thanks for watching. We're going to have some more ads for you next week. Okay, as always, I love getting professional musicians, hobbyists, music teachers, students, just talking to them about music and their goals and career and whatever it is they do. This week I've got Christine Vrablic. She's a studying professional musician from Connecticut. Mostly piano and singing. Any other instruments in there, or just those two?
Just the two main ones. I mean, as a studying student, where I go, there have been quite a few times where I have to pick up an instrument we haven't played before and kind of show what we can do after they teach a lesson.
Right. When did you start playing piano for the first time?
Well,
was it before singing, or did you sing first, or both?
I think the two came hand in hand. As a child, I was greatly influenced by my family. There was always a piano around, either at our house or my grandparents' house, and I tinkered on that at a young age. And we grew up with a lot of family members that were musical as well. I was greatly influenced by my aunt most of the time during my childhood. So I'd have to say I started pretty much at the same time, piano and singing.
Cool. So, I mean, it definitely went hand in hand then. You just, you needed one to have the other.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
That's to get the notes right,
How old were you when you first really started either of them?
When I really got into it, I started getting into it late high school, junior, senior year, probably more senior year because I was more involved in music. It's kind of the route I knew I wanted to go. And then when I got into college, then everything technical came hand in hand. I learned the piano even more, so I was more self-taught before college than anything else, though.
And then when you got to college, you started music there? Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I mean, I've been teaching for whatever many years we won't get into, and I've got students that are like 6 years old, and I mean, I think about it, and they're younger, way younger than when I really started studying music at all, which means they're technically already ahead of me.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, I mean, it was almost the same. It's like around high school was the fuse was lit, so to speak. And I think that's because when we're all in high school, like that's when you know what kind of music you like, the taste of music you like. When you're younger, you kind of just like whatever your folks are listening to. So
right.
You hit high school and...
But actually, when I was younger, what my parents listened to greatly influenced how I write today and who I like today. So it actually helped me on what my parents listened to.
Wow. Go parents. I think it's funny. I mean, I think even what you do doesn't reflect in that style of music. The influence is always there. For instance, like I do mostly rock, and yet even with that, I grew up listening to like John Denver and Pavarotti.
Right.
And there is no John Denver or Pavarotti influence, but it is there for whatever it's worth because they were both... It had their, whatever it was, like John Denver was basically a king in the folk sort of genre and that country folk, and so it's melodic, it's melody, it is what it is. When did you really start writing? How old were you when you really first wrote something?
I'd have to say I started doing, it kind of stemmed off senior year in high school when I started doing poetry in my English class, but when I started setting my poems so-calledly to music, it came about in college. Basically, I had to take a break from actually practicing the classical music, and so I would pull out something that I was working on and fool around with that.
And you've recorded some of these things that you've written. About how many songs would you say you've recorded?
On CD, about 11 or 12.
The very first thing that I ever recorded was on a boombox with a tape deck. And then you move from there. I went from the boombox with the tape deck to the boombox with the dual tape deck, so you could press play on one and record on the other and cheat. And then, two boomboxes trying to record off of each other. And then, hey, all of a sudden I bought a 4-track recorder. I could record on a cassette with 4 different tracks. This was like a miracle. Now we're all in digital recording and the miracle of Apple computers and all that fun stuff. So what genre do you fall in, do you think?
I toyed with the idea for a while, a couple years ago when I started recording the CD, but I think a more conclusive name or genre would probably fall into the category of spiritual indie pop.
Yeah. It's...
I'm more of a, comes from the emotion that I write from, so probably where the spiritual comes in.
Yeah. It's funny because, I mean, so much these days, I think, falls into the indie category, and I think it's because everything has gotten so broad that it's too hard to really label it as one type of genre or another. It's sort of like a melting pot of genres. I know from listening to this recordings that you sent me, a lot of them do. It's dominantly, it is piano, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is piano and you. And so it just has that sound. And there's Journey you and I actually worked on. And so that little bit of guitar that was thrown in, suddenly the song took a twist into a different genre. So it's interesting how even the littlest thing can almost change what that is. It's not the same sound anymore, but it still all falls under indie, I think. So you mentioned influences earlier, but specify a couple of your favorites and people that have really influenced you musically.
Well, as a kid, my main influence, my aunt influenced me with this artist, and that's Billy Joel, and hence the piano. As far as the singing goes, I have many influences that vary. Sarah McLachlan, Amy Lee, there's so many to name. Where do I start pulling from? Anything that I really listen to, even bands, have influenced me, like Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, even classical music. Beethoven's one of my favorite composers.
Wow. It's just such a spread.
Quite a range.
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier. It's whatever influences you is your influence for whatever reason. It doesn't necessarily have to reflect in your own music, but it's there for what, inspires you, so to speak. Would you say, like, what kind of inspires you when you are writing songs? How do you come up with song ideas?
There really isn't, I don't sit down and say, okay, today I'm going to write about a dog. Sometimes I kind of have to be at one with myself, and that might sound really corny, but just to go out and, sit in nature is one of the best influences in writing, just to have a clear mind, and sometimes the words come on the paper, and other times I can just sit and tinker on the piano, and that's how it comes. There is no rhyme or reason of how I get my music. I can't say this is the format of how I write my music. It comes to me at different times of the day. I could be 2 o'clock in the morning, be awake, and start writing a piece out of the blue. It's crazy. Most of my stuff comes, though, it's fueled from emotions and what I'm dealing with in life, or maybe what someone else is dealing with in life. I have many, many friends that are going through problems, a family, and it could just be something that small that can fuel something on the piano or lyrics.
Spark some sort of an idea or an emotion or a thought, and basically gives you a subject matter or a story to sing about, probably, right?
Right.
That's great. I mean, it's funny because I ask people all the time, what is your writing process? And it really is such a broad thing. Nobody really has one way that they write anything. I mean, it's just what it is. If you're inspired, you write. But I think it's the question that I ask the most, because everybody still does have, regardless of how broad that spectrum is, everybody still has sort of different things that do come up, because we all still do write differently, even if it is 20 different ways to get there. It's interesting. I mean, that's sort of the beauty of the art. It's infinite.
Right.
What is it overall then that really is what you like best about music? What is it that made you really say, this is something that I could do all day long if I wanted to?
I had such a passion for music in high school, and my teacher just made music fun, and I think, to have that right teacher to